that's built in next to the wall. And that about does it for the kitchen. Right now we're on the shelf above the door leading to the garage, and one of the things that is up there is an old cabbage cutter, shredder. In front of that is a Knox gelatin box, which belonged to my parents, and so it has quite a bit of sentimental value. Also, the cat and dog from Kennel Ration are of sentimental value. As you go across the top of the cupboard, you will see that there are just items. One of those is a cover for Unita biscuit carton, which was purchased in Williamsburg several years ago. That will appear on your right as you begin to pan. The other water jugs are just a small collection that I have. And then there are a collection of milk with magnesia bottles. And that's the extent of what is on the top of the cupboard. The leaded window that you saw briefly in the corner and saw a little bit ago comes from Redfield, South Dakota, and was removed from a very old house there, and I purchased it in approximately 1985 from an antique shop there. There are also about 4 coffee grinders in the house, all purchased at different times. The earliest one was purchased in 1966, but they are all very old. And that's about the extent of the kitchen. We should point out that we have 2 microwaves in the house. This one was purchased in 1985. The other one is attached to the stove, or the range, and that was purchased in April of '89. In the garage, and we have a number of things out here besides an '89 Honda LX in the garage. There's also, this is a single car garage, and we have a storage bin to the front of the garage, which houses all of the different tools and power equipment, including a chainsaw and that sort of thing. Now we're in the dining room, and you can get a shot of the table, 6 chairs, and a buffet hutch. And in a short while, we will give you close-ups of a few of the items in the room. The hutch and buffet house most of the glassware and Fallsgraf York stoneware. This is a displayer that contains a cream pitcher, very old. I really couldn't even tell you how far back it dates. Well, over 100 years, I should imagine, because it was given to me when I was very small by a neighbor lady. Also, these come from a different neighbor lady. These are very definitely over 100 years old, salt and pepper shakers, as are this pair right here. And then, as we go to the top shelf, this is one of the coffee grinders that I mentioned earlier, and another water base. The center platter up here, meat platter, was my mother's, and prior to that it belonged to my paternal grandmother, Lear. The covered wagon was made by Lyle's uncle in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and he made everything by hand on that. On the left is a blue Fenton bowl, purchased at an antique shop in here in South Dakota in 1984. To the middle is, in the front, is a fruit bowl that was purchased at an antique shop at Williamsburg, Virginia, approximately that same year. Directly behind it is a bowl that belonged to my mother's aunt, Christina. Again, I do not know the age, but in excess of 100 years, and presumably was brought over from Germany. To the right is a green wedding basket bowl, again purchased at a flea market. I do not know the age of that. And right directly in front of it is a cookie crumber. That was purchased at an antique shop in Ringgold, Wisconsin back in 1966. The duster part is made out of horsehair. The jewelry tree that you see on this wall was made by Marilyn and Kurt Rohr back in approximately 1974, and this was a gift from them. We are in the porch, and because it is October, we've already taken in the plants, so you will see a lot of plants in the living room shortly, which would normally be out in the porch. We have porch furniture out here, seating room for 12. In a minute, I would like to point out to you the stained windows. We also keep a radio out here in the porch as well. The stained windows that are hanging, the pair on the end, were purchased in Williamsburg, Virginia at an antique shop. The one in the center was purchased from an antique dealer out of New Jersey. These are stained windows that are presently being refinished, and the one that has the heart in the center, there are two such as this, and there is a matching pair of the ones on my left. These two stained windows are just single windows in themselves, and they too are in the process of being refinished. Now we're in the living room, and what you're looking at right now is an oval trunk which was purchased approximately 1973. Right directly next to that is an old antique rocking chair, again purchased approximately in 1973. An old lamp, floor lamp, and the wall hanging that you see was done by a friend it has been quilted. As we go across the room, you will see pictures of family, an armoire with glassware and mementos inside that. And you might also be getting a glimpse of the old antique bird cage, doll buggy, and milk can over in the corner. Doll buggy dates back to 1940. As you may recall, I talked about the plants are now all in the living room that would normally be in the porch, so that's why you're seeing a lot of plants in this room. What I'm holding is a antique quilt, which probably dates to circulation of 1930s. And I'm going to put that aside. That normally hangs on the deacon bench, but for purposes of avoiding glare here with our camera, I'm going to put it aside, and then I'm going to open up the armoire. This is 1920s vintage. And inside, we'll start with the top shelf. There's any number of collectibles in here. I'm just going to try to point out a couple of things. One of the perhaps most attractive is the, well, I'm trying to think of the name for it. Perfume atomizer is what I was trying to think of. This is Art Deco and was purchased at an antique shop in Redfield, South Dakota. Very, very nice and in excellent condition. Going down to the second shelf, there's a small collection of eye cups. Two or a matching pair of cologne bottles over here that belong to an aunt of mine from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She gave those to me back in approximately 1944. This is Anne's. This is Yadro, and it was a gift to her from her aunt for graduation in 1988. There is a Shirley Temple cream pitcher back here. There is an old cologne bottle, again vintage, approximately early 20s. Down here, different collectible glassware, depression glass. The sugar bowl was my mother's. The calendar plate states 1962, which was the year Lyle and I were married. The one that was on the top shelf was 1957, the year I graduated from high school. This is a Shane Hoot animal, very rare, almost impossible to find anymore. Most of them are probably either in museums or in private collectors' hands. The bottom of the shelf has, again, some collection of old compacts. And the bottom drawer contains what few pieces of silver that I have. This is just another 1920s atomizer. We're standing in front of the living room window right now, and on the left side is a little jug which belonged to Lyle's grandmother. Next to that is a coffee grinder, again one of those in the collection, that was purchased from a dealer at an antique show at Springfield Mall. In the center is an etched window, probably came out of, to the center of the window we're looking at an etched window that was purchased from an antique dealer in Huron, South Dakota back in 1977. It's probably from an old house. They used to have these etched windows in the foyers. The Aladdin lamp that sits on the table just directly below that was purchased again from an antique dealer in Huron, South Dakota in 1970. All of the shade, the chimney, etc. is all original. We're looking at another old floor lamp. The shade has been replaced on that, and it was rewired. Next to it is a picture entitled Simplicity, and it's signed by Reynolds. To the right of that is a Queen Anne writing desk that's approximately 75 years old, purchased in Wausau, Wisconsin back in 1965. And the candlesticks on top are antique also, as are the samplers hanging on the wall, all done by hand. The one sampler is dated 1936. There's no date on the other one. Now we're in the family room, and I want to point out old sunglasses, probably in excess, obviously, of 100 years old. Those were purchased from a private person at a flea market several years ago. The Book of Poetry by Longfellow, also purchased back in the 60s. While we're on the subject of that, this was my mother's autograph book, which sits on the buffet server here. Poem by Tennyson, Crossing the Bar, also purchased from an antique dealer. The sconces on the wall were handmade by an older man several years ago and purchased at a craft fair in Occoquan, Virginia. Right now we're focusing on a little old Child's antique rocker. To the left is Anne's Raggedy Ann doll that she got when she was a baby. Her mother and dad gave that to her. And it has a music box in it. To the right is a large Raggedy Ann doll which we purchased at a yard sale when she was about 8 or 9. And the small child's quilt behind it is also quite old. That too was purchased from a private dealer. On the left is a French provincial love seat, and to the right of that is my mother's sewing machine, which was given to her when she married in 1929. Above that is our stereo. And if you look up toward the window, you'll see a stained window, and there are a matching pair of those hanging in the family room. As we go to the right of that, there is a hat box containing old hats, and the armoire was purchased in Williamsburg, Virginia, approximately 1980, from an antique dealer. What you see in the front is my mother's wedding dress. It was the flapper era because she was married in March 1929. This is a couple of old, or I should say these are a couple of old antique hangers that were given to me by our neighbor lady in here in South Dakota many years ago. There are a number of old beaded bags in here, a mink hat, old gloves, and there's a crocheted coverlet for a bed, which was made by Lyle's grandmother. There's also an antique quilted coverlet. There is another old wedding dress that dates back to the late 1800s and was purchased in Davenport, Iowa, approximately 7-8 years ago, back in 1984. You can see the other stained window that matches the one we looked at previously. The library cases, we have a complete set of Charles Dickens writings on the bottom shelf. Also, 2 very old copies of The Land of Oz. One is called The Land of Oz and the other one is Glenda of Oz. This Land of Oz was written by Frank Baum, as was the other one. And one of the more valuable books is A Dream of Fair Women with illustrations by Harrison Fisher. These candle holders are old spindles from a mill in England. The horse was purchased at a craft show last year. The jug that you see sitting on the mantle belonged to my parents and was given to me. And there's a box over here, an old wooden box from the New England area that was purchased from someone in a yard sale. And we have mostly family pictures in that. This was just taken off of the wall temporarily to show you that it is an 1898 calendar, which was purchased at an antique shop up in Connecticut back in 1969. On the wall is a Bush beer clock, keeps perfect time, and the rest are family pictures. Shooting right now. This is the downstairs guest bathroom we're looking at right now. And in a moment we'll look at the guest bedroom, which is right across the hall. On the wall are 3 collectibles ads for cars. And the one on the left was similar to one that I had owned. And the one in the middle and on the right Well, the one in the middle was a Mercury, a 1956 Mercury that my dad and mother owned. And the one on the right is more typically the car that I owned. And there's a small picture of me up in the corner standing next to it. There's another antique lamp down here, minus a shade. And we have our luggage down here, one set of it. The other set is up in the attic. Sewing machine is a Husqvarna and was purchased in 1965. And the armoire to the right is basically what they would call a wardrobe closet, probably 20s circulation. The shelf over on the right is, just wanted to point out that there is an old teapot or coffee pot, I guess it is. Next to that is a little jam jar, dates back to the 30s. Some of my fall scrap stoneware is up on this shelf, and also one of the other coffee grinders in the collection. A plant and an old box of ivory flakes, which is still sealed. We're looking at the Coke sign right now, which is a thermometer, and to the right of that is a 1929 calendar in its entirety, purchased primarily because that was the year my parents were married, and I purchased it for sentimental reasons. The other items are just collectibles that have been purchased at different times. To take a brief shot here of the linen closet to show you that this is where we store the linens, over the counter, drugs, and so forth. This is Anne's room, and we're looking right now at the many things that she has in her room, including a television set. Everything is chock full, including the chest of drawers, her stereo with many tapes, she has a telephone on the wall, and her bed was just purchased approximately in June '89 this year. She also has an old writing desk. Really not sure about circulation on that, but again in the Queen Anne style. The Art Deco shelf that was hanging above it is quite unique. It's called Girl Washing Her Hair in the Fountain. And that's Anne's closet, filled with many, many sweaters and many, many things. This is Andrew's room, and as we can see, there are many, many things to look at. He has his own television set as well. He has a computer with modem. He has a Christmas racket. Sitting in the corner. Stereo sitting on the shelf. The dry sink that he uses as his nightstand is also very old. It's time to clean your room, Andrew, wouldn't you say? Well, at last we're in the master bedroom. And once again, we're trying to overlook a lot of the extra stuff that's still sitting around here that hasn't been put away. 2 armoires, one is Lyle's, one is mine, where we store a lot of our clothing. Closet, this one is mine. We have a cordless telephone up here, and the quilt was made by Marilyn Rohr's mother and was a gift from Marilyn and Kurt in 1986. Over on Lyle's nightstand, a few little collectibles there, including another Aladdin lamp, which we have not been able to find a shade yet to fit that. We are still searching. Old pictures on the wall, including some that were purchased, 2 of them were purchased last year in Ohio, 1988. Also, there are 2 pictures of myself, one when I was 21 and one when I was approximately 6 months old. The beads that hang below that picture was a toy that I had as a baby. Wedding picture and a copy of the invitation done in ceramic is below the beads. An old Windsor rocker sits to the right of the table, and the crocheted shawl was made by my mother sometime in the 30s. And there is a full bath off of the master bedroom. Again, very full. This is a blanket chest that sits here in the master bedroom, and it was purchased from Mrs. Kurth in Ringgold, Wisconsin back in 1965 when we lived in Wausau. It is in excellent condition, made of pine. Up at the top is a drawing done by an Indian in Rapid City, South Dakota. Actually, he was located in Keystone, South Dakota, outside of Rapid. His name is Pahaska, that's his Indian name, and he always signs his works. And this one was done in August of '83 when we were back there, and I bought that from him. This is a piece of wood that has been sculpted by a man in Mitchell, South Dakota. At least that's where I purchased it. I believe he resides in Aberdeen. And all of his sculpting is unique because every piece of wood is different. Therefore, every face comes out different. The doll cupboard is mine. Was made by my uncle Tony Spatafor, and he gave that to me when I was about 4 years old. So this would have been 1942 approximately. He shipped it on the train. He worked for the railroad at the time, and the only damage that was done was that when it arrived at our house, there was a crack across one of the windows, and we just left it the way it was. We never attempted to change it. It has little movable drawers, and the doors on the bottom open as well. I do not have my good set of dishes out here. These are just little doll dishes that were purchased later on for show purposes. My good set of doll dishes is put away in a closet, and it's a complete set. And the little laundry basket that sits on top was one that I used when I would have my mother launder my doll clothes, and I would have her put them in the basket, and then I would hang them out on the clothesline when she would hang out the laundry for the week. When we moved into this house in December of '69, I was pregnant at the time with Ann, and I regret that we didn't take our first Christmas picture in here. However, at that time we had absolutely no furniture yet. We'd only lived in the house about 2 weeks. And so we didn't start taking the pictures until after Ann was born. So she was born in May of 1970, and the first picture that you're looking at is Christmas 1970. And we decided that we were going to start a tradition by taking the family picture each year in front of the fireplace. And you will notice that it progresses through the years, through the 70s, down and around. And we wind up with the last picture being taken. The most recent one is, of course, Christmas of 1988. Christmas of 1989 will be taken sometime either in late November or early December. There are approximately, I guess, 19 pictures here right now.